I'm working with the idea of water, and in this case water in a small lake, particular small lake called a kettle pond, where the water is very, very clear, so that when you're standing in it, you can look down and see the bottom, and then you can look out across, and you can still see a little bit, and then you can look further across. And at a certain point, looking at water, all you get is reflection of sky. But I'm very interested in that transition. And when you look at this piece, you're definitely thinking about the relationship of the surface to the bottom. It will locate you as a viewer, so that if you really were looking at water this close, you'd be standing in that water yourself. And that's really important to me. It's sort of a different way to think about landscape, that you are literally in it. You know, you never know when you're an artist exactly what you're doing, but I feel that there's this urgency about the environment right now and our relationship to it. So as long as I'm talking about landscape painting, and I have to say, I feel like that's a term that I'm ready to reclaim. I don't view it as a nostalgic pastime. I think it's really connected to, you know, one of the big questions of our time is, what is our relationship as a species to all the other species and the planet and the natural world? These paintings are not pictures of something in the sense that what you end up seeing is something that actually exists. These are definitely fictions, but sometimes a fiction feels truer. The other thing is, I'm not actually thinking of these as paintings of leaves or water or shadows. I'm thinking of them as paintings of the experience of looking. This is the drawing that I did a couple weeks ago from the setup of the pond in my studio. And it was really, really helpful to have that setup. It is not a perspective drawing. It is an observed drawing of the sticks and the surface of the wire and the bottom of the wire. This is a pond I've constructed to draw from, sort of like a landscape that's a still life, or a still life that's a landscape. When I'm drawing it, I'm sitting at the easel and I pull it over really close, sort of like I'm like looking into the water like that. But I can also make fake shadows of things that would be out of the picture, but their shadow is in the picture. And if I want more beads, I can just add more sticks. Well, it took me a long time to figure out how to build this thing. I started with a fake pond during lockdown last April in our bedroom. We had a glass-topped coffee table, and I had a bunch of daffodils in pots, and I thought, oh, I can't go outside, but I can make this pond. And it is important to me to have some of these pieces that are big, because then you can have the sensation that one has standing in a pond, that you're looking down, and then you're looking out about 12 feet, and there's this amazing transitional area where you get a little bit of reflection of sky, but you can still kind of see into the bottom. And then further out, it's just the reflection of the sky. I started the smaller ones to really figure out, how am I going to use these? Because I'm thinking of them as visual vocabulary. That's the refractions of light on the bottom, the way a weed can come up through the water, but then changes a little bit when it goes below the water. But it connects the surface with the bottom. And then the reflection of the top. So I'm trying to figure out how to make all these things work together. The interesting thing now is that just recently I figured out how it might live in the world, because when something is not a painting that you hang on the wall, and it's not really a sculpture, how's it going to exist? So I've been talking about the pond, the kettle pond on Cape Cod that was sort of the memory that started all of this. But usually when you're looking at a landscape painting of a pond, what you see is this part, and then you see the trees. But I'm not interested in the trees at all, and I'm hardly interested in this part. I'm interested in this part, but I'm very interested in this idea of how our brains sort of tune things out and just give us an image based on mostly information we've collected in the past. So often we don't see how things really look. You can't really paint water, you can only paint the clues that it's there. And one of the clues is that a weed will change color when it comes out through the surface, or a leaf is a little different when it's under the water. So when you decide, it gives you this opportunity to have a whole other thing happen, like in this case, the bright green color, and it creates a little triangle because the top sticks out. And it also solves a problem that painters have all the time, which is glare. And when a painting is flat on the wall, there's a lot of glare, but if you can tip the top forward a little bit, you can see it better. So this is also a painting where there's kind of a mixture of an observed situation and then a painting solution. I used to use this vocabulary in large abstract paintings of these little lines that are just like this nest or this web or something that's sort of moving and floating and reflecting light and not reflecting light. And it's just what happens with the small waves on the surface of water, that when they're reflecting light, you can't see through them, but when they're not reflecting light, like the wave, the shadow part of the wave, you can see through it. So it's a very real phenomenon, but it's a really painterly, abstract way to get there. I want to read something that someone named Barry Schwabsky wrote. A landscape painting is not necessarily a representation of a landscape, but rather something that, in being constructed out of pieces of representation, or possibly just echoes of former representations, kindles an experience of its own, one that, as those fragments of resemblance suggest, is somehow like the experience of landscape. This is a French easel, and when you see photos of all those French impressionists out there painting with a cigarette usually, this is the kind of easel they're using. And landscape painters still use them, and I just love sitting here at my pond with my French easel.